The day I discovered my husband was planning to destroy me was the same day I realized he had no idea he was married to a woman worth $8 million. My name is Elena Martinez, and for 4 years, I hid my multi-million-dollar tech empire from everyone, including my own husband. While Ryan thought I was just some unsuccessful freelancer working in pajamas from our kitchen table, I was quietly building one of Colorado's most successful consulting firms and secretly funding the lifestyle he believed his lawyer salary provided. But when Ryan delivered an ultimatum, get a real job or face divorce, I knew something was terribly wrong. The man who claimed to love me was suddenly questioning every aspect of our financial life, and his new advisor at work had some very specific opinions about wives who didn't contribute meaningfully to a marriage. What I uncovered next would destroy everything I thought I knew about my husband, my marriage, and the people I trusted most. Because sometimes the person trying to steal your life isn't who you think they are, and sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop hiding who you really are. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches, you make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday in our modest home in Springdale Heights, Colorado. I was sitting at my laptop in our sunlit kitchen, steam rising from my coffee as I reviewed quarterly projections for Martinez Tech Consulting, when Ryan walked in wearing his most expensive suit, the charcoal Tom Ford I'd secretly helped him afford through a carefully orchestrated year-end bonus from Henderson and Associates. "Still playing on your computer, I see," he said, his tone carrying that familiar note of condescension that had been growing stronger over the past few months. He adjusted his silk tie and checked his reflection in our stainless steel refrigerator. I looked up from my screen where I'd been analyzing a proposal from Meridian Industries, wanting to hire my firm for a $2 million digital transformation project. "Just working," I replied, simply closing the laptop. It was easier than explaining what I actually did for a living, easier than watching his eyes glaze over when I tried to discuss enterprise software solutions or data analytics platforms. "Working," he repeated with a bitter laugh. "Elena, we need to talk about your situation. This whole freelance thing you're doing, it's not sustainable." My situation. As if my carefully built business empire was some kind of problem to be solved. I'd been hearing variations of this conversation for months now, ever since Ryan started spending more time with his colleagues at Henderson and Associates, the mid-tier law firm where he worked as a junior partner. More specifically, ever since he'd started working closely with Victoria Sterling, their top-performing real estate attorney who drove a white BMW and lived in the upscale Riverside district. "What do you mean not sustainable?" I asked, genuinely curious about where this was heading. From my perspective, my business had never been more sustainable. We were tracking toward $12 million in revenue this year, with recurring contracts that provided steady income streams and a client waiting list that stretched 8 months out. Ryan sat down across from me, his expression taking on what I'd come to recognize as his serious lawyer face, the one he used when he wanted to sound authoritative and final. "Look, I've been thinking about our future, about what we're building together. And honestly, this freelance computer stuff you do, it's not building anything real." Computer stuff. 5 years of building relationships with Fortune 500 companies, developing proprietary software solutions, and creating systems that saved corporations millions of dollars. And he called it computer stuff. The irony wasn't lost on me that his law firm's entire case management system ran on software I'd custom built for them software. They paid my company handsomely for though Ryan had no idea I was the one behind Martinez Tech Consulting. "I bring in decent money," I said, carefully testing the waters. Decent was an understatement of epic proportions, but I'd learned early in our marriage that Ryan's ego couldn't handle the truth about my income. When we'd first moved in together 4 years ago, I'd made the mistake of mentioning a particularly good month where I'd earned more than his annual salary. The argument that followed had lasted for days, ending only when I promised to be more sensitive about discussing my work. "Decent money from what, though?" He leaned forward, his voice taking on the patient tone he used with difficult clients. "You sit at this table all day in your pajamas, typing on your laptop. There's no office, no colleagues, no real structure. How is that a career?" I glanced down at my outfit. Yes, I was wearing comfortable clothes, but these weren't pajamas. They were expensive athleisure wear that I could afford because my company had closed 4 major deals last quarter. But explaining that would require explaining everything else, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not yet. "It pays our bills." I pointed out which was technically true, though dramatically insufficient, in describing how my income had not only paid our bills, but also quietly subsidized Ryan's lifestyle in ways he'd never suspected. Does it, though? Ryan's tone sharpened. Because I've been looking at our finances, Elena. Really looking at them. And the numbers don't add up. And a chill ran down my spine. Ryan had always been content to let me handle our household finances, claiming he was too busy with his legal work to manage domestic details. If he'd started digging into our accounts, there would be questions I wasn't prepared to answer. What do you mean they don't add up? I mean, according to what you claim to make from your freelancing, we should be struggling to afford this place. But somehow we're not only making rent on this house, we're also paying for my car lease, my professional wardrobe, our dining out vacations, all of it. Either you're lying about your income or the money is coming from somewhere else. The accusation hung in the air between us. I felt my carefully constructed world beginning to shift the foundation of our relationship, suddenly feeling less stable than I'd thought. For 3 years, I'd been funneling money into our joint accounts through carefully orchestrated transfers, making it appear as though Ryan's law firm was more successful than it actually was. I'd arranged for bonuses and case settlements that were actually my money, all to preserve his sense of being the primary breadwinner. Maybe you're underestimating what freelance consulting can bring in, I said weakly, knowing the excuse wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elena, I work with real businesses every day. I know what consultants make, especially the kind of small-time operation you're running. Computer repair and basic IT support doesn't generate the kind of money that supports our lifestyle. Computer repair. Basic IT support. The words stung more than they should have. My company didn't repair computers, we architected digital ecosystems for multinational corporations. We didn't provide basic IT support, we designed proprietary algorithms that revolutionized how Fortune 500 companies managed their data infrastructure. But to Ryan, it was all just computer stuff that I did in my pajamas. So what are you saying? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew. I'm saying something doesn't add up, and I think it's time we both faced reality about what you actually contribute to this relationship. The word contribute landed like a physical blow. Everything I'd built, everything I'd achieved, everything I'd quietly done to support our life together, and he was questioning my contribution. I looked at my husband across our kitchen table, seeing him clearly, for perhaps the first time in our 4-year marriage, and I realized that the conversation I'd been dreading for months was finally about to happen. Ryan stood up from the table, smoothing his tie with the kind of precision that had always impressed me when we first started dating. Back then, his attention to detail had seemed sophisticated, professional. Now it felt performative, like he was constantly preparing for an audience that might judge him worthy or lacking. I've been talking to some people at the firm. He continued, walking to the window that overlooked our small backyard. Getting advice about financial planning, investment strategies, building real wealth for the future. The way he emphasized real wealth made my stomach tighten. I had a feeling I knew exactly who had been providing this advice, and it wasn't the senior partners at Henderson and Associates. What kind of advice? I asked, though I suspected I didn't want to hear the answer. Well, Victoria has some interesting perspectives on dual-income households and financial optimization. There it was. Victoria Sterling, with her perfectly blown-out blonde hair and her BMW and her corner office that overlooked the financial district. She's built quite an impressive portfolio herself, you know. Real estate investments, stock options, retirement planning. She understands how money actually works. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And I don't understand how money works. Ryan turned from the window, his expression almost pitying. Elena, you work from our kitchen table. You don't have a 401k, you don't have health insurance through an employer. You don't have any of the financial structures that create actual security. Whatever you're making from your computer work, it's not building anything lasting. The irony was so profound it almost made me laugh. My computer work had generated enough profit last year to buy 5 houses like the one we lived in. I had investment accounts Ryan had never heard of, retirement funds that could support us both comfortably for decades, and a business valuation that placed my net worth well into the 8 figures. But explaining that would require explaining everything else, and I was beginning to realize that Ryan might not be ready to hear it. Victoria thinks... He started, then caught himself. Victoria thinks, what? I pressed. She thinks that in a modern marriage, both partners need to contribute equally to building wealth, not just paying bills month to month, but actually creating financial growth and security. I absorbed this, wondering how Ryan would react if he knew that I'd been the one creating financial growth and security for our household from the very beginning. That his own law practice would have failed 8 months ago without the anonymous cash infusions I'd arranged through shell companies and fabricated legal settlements. Has Victoria shared these thoughts with you directly? I asked carefully. Ryan's cheeks flushed slightly. We've had some conversations, yes. Professional conversations about financial planning and career development. Professional conversations. Well, I'd been married to Ryan long enough to recognize when he was being deliberately vague. What kind of professional conversations require discussing our personal finances? It's not like that, he said quickly, but his defensive tone suggested otherwise. Victoria is just very knowledgeable about these things. She's built a successful practice, she understands investment strategies, she has real expertise in financial growth. I stood up from the table, my laptop clutched against my chest like a shield. Ryan, are you having an affair with Victoria? The question hung between us, direct and uncompromising. Ryan's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, guilt, indignation, before settling on something that looked like resignation. I'm not having an affair, he said finally, but I am questioning whether we want the same things out of life. What does that mean? It means I'm 34 years old and I want to build something significant. I want a partner who shares that ambition, who brings real resources and connections to the table. Someone who understands professional networking and wealth creation and long-term financial planning. Someone like Victoria, in other words. Someone who wore designer suits to an office and had business cards and attended networking events. Someone whose success was visible and quantifiable in ways that Ryan could understand and appreciate. And you don't think I understand those things? I asked. Elena, you work in your pajamas. You don't have colleagues or professional relationships or any kind of business network. Your idea of a career milestone is getting another small client who needs their website fixed. Website fixes. The disconnect was so vast, I almost didn't know how to bridge it. My most recent small client was a pharmaceutical company that had paid my firm $3.2 million to optimize their global supply chain management system. But Ryan saw only what was visible to him, me at our kitchen table working on a laptop. What if I told you that my work was more substantial than you realize? I asked, testing the waters. How substantial could it be? Ryan laughed, but there was an edge to it. Elena, I see our bank statements. I know what comes in and what goes out. Unless you're hiding money from me, your freelance work brings in maybe $60,000 or $70,000 a year. That's not substantial in terms of building real wealth. Hiding money. If he only knew. I had been hiding money, but not in the way he imagined. I'd been hiding how much I made, not how little. I'd been protecting his ego by making my success invisible, by funneling my earnings through complex financial structures that made it appear as though our comfortable lifestyle was the result of his legal work rather than my consulting empire. Maybe we should sit down and really look at our finances together, I suggested. All of them. But Ryan's expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. Actually, that's part of what I wanted to talk to you about. I think we need to make some changes. What kind of changes? I think you need to get a real job, Elena. Something with steady income benefits, professional growth opportunities. Something that contributes meaningfully to our financial future. The word real hit me like a slap. Everything I'd built, everything I'd achieved, and he was telling me to get a real job. And if I don't want to do that? Ryan was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window again. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and measured, like he was delivering a verdict. Then I think we need to seriously evaluate whether this marriage is working. The silence that followed Ryan's ultimatum stretched between us like a chasm. I could hear the clock on our kitchen wall ticking, the distant hum of our neighbor's lawnmower, the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. This was it, the moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for since the day I decided to keep my business success hidden from my husband. So let me understand this correctly, I said slowly, setting my laptop down on the counter with deliberate care. You're saying that unless I abandon the work I've been doing and get what you consider a real job, You want to end our marriage. Ryan turned back to face me, and I saw something in his expression that I'd never noticed before, a coldness that seemed to have been growing beneath the surface of our relationship for months. I'm saying that I need a partner who shares my vision for building a successful life, someone who brings equal resources and professional credibility to the relationship. Equal resources, I repeated. And you've determined that I don't bring equal resources based on what exactly? Based on reality, Elena. His voice was gaining confidence now, as if he'd rehearsed this conversation. I'm a partner at a respected law firm. I have a professional reputation, client relationships, earning potential that grows every year. You have a laptop and some freelance clients who probably pay you a few hundred here and there. The numbers were so far from reality that I almost laughed. My lowest paying client last month had paid Martinez Tech Consulting $85,000 for a basic security audit. But Ryan's perception of my work was so fundamentally skewed that correcting him would require rebuilding his entire understanding of what I did for a living. Have you discussed our marriage with Victoria? I asked instead. Ryan's jaw tightened. My conversations with Victoria are professional in nature. That's not what I asked. Yes, he admitted after a pause. We've talked about the challenges of being in a relationship where the financial contributions are significantly imbalanced. Imbalanced how? Elena, I make $135,000 a year at the firm. You make maybe $60,000 or $70,000 from your freelancing? That's not balanced. That means I'm carrying the financial load of this relationship while you pursue a hobby. A hobby. 5 years of 18-hour days of building client relationships across 3 continents, of developing software solutions that had revolutionized entire industries, and he called it a hobby. What did Victoria suggest we do about this imbalance? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. Ryan looked uncomfortable for the first time in our conversation. She suggested that modern relationships work best when both partners are equally ambitious and equally capable of contributing to shared financial goals. And she doesn't think I'm equally ambitious or capable. She thinks that someone who's satisfied working from their kitchen table in their pajamas might not have the drive necessary for building real wealth. I absorbed this, trying to process the fact that my husband had been discussing our marriage with another woman who had apparently concluded that I was lazy and unambitious, a woman who knew nothing about me except what Ryan had chosen to share, which was clearly a distorted version of reality. Has Victoria met me? I asked. That's not relevant. It seems relevant if she's providing advice about our relationship. Ryan ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as frustration. Look, this isn't about Victoria. This is about us, about what we want out of life. I want to buy a house in Riverside Heights, take vacations in Europe, send our future kids to private schools. I want the kind of life that requires serious financial planning and 2 real careers. Riverside Heights was where Victoria lived, in one of those sprawling modern houses with 3-car garages and professionally landscaped yards. It was also a neighborhood I could afford to buy into tomorrow if I wanted to, but Ryan had no way of knowing that. And you don't think my work could contribute to those goals? Honestly, no, I don't. His tone was becoming more confident, more certain. Freelance work is inherently unstable. You have no guaranteed income, no benefits, no clear path for growth. It's not the foundation you build a serious life on. I walked to our refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water, partly because I was thirsty, and partly because I needed a moment to think. The conversation was heading toward territory I wasn't sure I was ready to navigate. Revealing the truth about my business would change everything between us, but continuing to let him believe I was some kind of unsuccessful freelancer was becoming impossible. What kind of job do you think I should get? I asked. Something in an office with a regular salary and benefits. Maybe administrative work at a corporate firm or customer service for a tech company. Something that uses your computer skills but provides stability. Administrative work. Customer service. I thought about the email I'd received yesterday from the CEO of a Fortune 100 company, personally thanking me for the system optimization that had saved his organization $15 million annually. I thought about the speaking engagement I'd turned down last month at a technology conference in Silicon Valley, where they'd offered me a $75,000 fee just to present my research. And if I did that, I said carefully, you think our marriage would improve? I think it would give us a foundation to build on, Ryan replied. Real financial security, shared professional goals, the kind of partnership that creates lasting wealth. But what if my current work is actually more financially successful than you realize? Ryan laughed, and the sound stung more than it should have. Elena, I've seen our bank account. I know what you deposit every month. Unless you're keeping secret accounts that I don't know about, your freelance work barely covers our grocery bills. Secret accounts. If only he knew how accurate that statement was, though not in the way he imagined. Ryan, I said slowly, what if I told you that everything you think you know about my work and my income is wrong? His expression shifted to something between amusement and pity. I'd say that wishful thinking doesn't change bank statements. Ryan's dismissive laugh echoed in our kitchen, and something inside me finally snapped. Not into anger exactly, but into a kind of crystalline clarity about the dynamics that had been shaping our marriage for 4 years. I realized that I'd been so focused on protecting his ego that I'd never stopped to consider what that protection was costing me. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen and felt my blood run cold. The message was from an unknown number, but the content made my stomach drop. Thought you should know Ryan's been asking a lot of questions about you lately. Some very specific questions. Be careful. A friend. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. Someone was warning me about my own husband. Someone who knew both of us well enough to have my number, but felt the need to remain anonymous. Who's that? Ryan asked, noticing my expression. Just a client. I lied, but my hands were shaking slightly as I set the phone down. Ryan studied my face with the intensity he usually reserved for cross-examining witnesses. Elena, is there something you're not telling me? The irony of the question was staggering. Was there something I wasn't telling him? Only about $8 million worth of something. But that text message had shifted something fundamental. Ryan hadn't just been having casual conversations with Victoria about our marriage. He'd been asking specific questions about me. Questions that had apparently concerned someone enough to send me an anonymous warning. Actually, I said quietly, there's quite a lot I haven't told you. Ryan's expression sharpened. What does that mean? It means that while you've been discussing our marriage with Victoria Sterling, I've been building something you apparently can't even imagine. I walked back to my laptop and opened it, pulling up the Martinez Tech Consulting website. For the first time in 4 years, I was about to show my husband who I really was. Ryan, I said, turning the screen toward him. I'd like you to meet Elena Martinez, founder and CEO of Martinez Tech Consulting. Annual revenue $12 million and growing. The color drained from Ryan's face as he stared at the professional website, complete with client testimonials from Fortune 500 companies, case studies of multi-million-dollar implementations, and my photograph prominently displayed under the leadership section. This can't be real, he whispered. It's very real. We just signed a contract last week with Pinnacle Industries for $2.8 million. Next month, we're starting a consulting engagement with Global Dynamics that will pay us $3.6 million over 24 months. Ryan sank into his chair, still staring at the laptop screen. But you work from our kitchen table. I work from our kitchen table because I own the company, and I can work wherever I want. I wear comfortable clothes because I don't need to impress anyone with my wardrobe. My work speaks for itself. 12 million, he repeated weakly. 12 million and growing. We're projecting 16 million in revenue next year. And you've been hiding this from me for how long? I've been protecting you from it, I corrected. For 4 years. The silence that followed my revelation was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in our marriage. Ryan sat motionless at the kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen as if the words founder and CEO might rearrange themselves into something that made sense within his understanding of our relationship. But there was something else I needed to know. Something about that anonymous text message. Ryan, I said carefully, when you've been discussing our finances with Victoria, what specifically have you told her about my work? He looked up from the laptop, his expression dazed. I told her you did some kind of freelance computer work, that you weren't very successful at it. What else? I mentioned that our lifestyle seemed inconsistent with what I thought you were earning, that I suspected, he trailed off, that you suspected what? That you might be hiding something, Victoria suggested I should investigate more thoroughly. My blood ran cold. Investigate how? Ryan's face went pale. She recommended I hire a private investigator to look into your financial activities, to make sure you weren't involved in anything illegal. The room seemed to spin around me. Victoria hadn't just been advising Ryan about our marriage, she'd been actively encouraging him to investigate me as if I were some kind of criminal. Did you hire one? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was going to, he admitted. Victoria gave me a name, someone she'd used before for client investigations. I grabbed my phone and quickly typed a message to the unknown number that had warned me was the PI Victoria Sterling recommended named Marcus Webb. The response came back within seconds. Yes. How did you know David Kim Henderson and Associates IT David Kim? I knew that name. He was the IT specialist at Ryan's law firm. Someone who would have access to internal communications and would know if Victoria was coordinating with outside investigators. Ryan, I said, my voice taking on a tone I'd never used with him before. Victoria Sterling has been manipulating you. She's been trying to destroy our marriage by convincing you that your wife is either a criminal or a failure. That's not. She was just trying to help. Help with what? Help you divorce me so she could have you for herself. Ryan's face flushed red. Victoria isn't interested in me romantically. I pulled out my phone again and opened Victoria's social media profiles, which I'd started monitoring weeks ago when I noticed Ryan's behavior changing. Look at this, I said, showing him her Instagram. Photo after photo from law firm events, always positioning herself next to Ryan, always with captions about amazing colleagues and professional partnerships, and the kind of man who understands ambition. Ryan scrolled through the images, his expression growing increasingly uncomfortable. And this... I continued pulling up her LinkedIn profile where she'd shared articles about power couples in the legal profession and finding your professional soulmate, all within the past 6 months, all coinciding with her increased interest in Ryan's marriage. She's been orchestrating this entire situation, Ryan. She convinced you that your wife was worthless so you'd leave me for her. And when subtle manipulation wasn't working fast enough, she escalated to suggesting you investigate me for criminal activity. Ryan set the phone down with shaking hands. I don't understand any of this. You don't understand it because you've been blinded by someone who's very good at psychological manipulation. Victoria Sterling identified you as a target months ago. She researched our relationship, found your insecurities about money and success, and then systematically exploited them. I opened my laptop again and pulled up a folder I'd been building for weeks, screenshots, email forwards from David Kim financial records that told a very different story about Henderson and Associates than Ryan knew. There's something else you need to know, I said. Your law firm hasn't been as successful as you think it has. What do you mean? Ryan asked, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I pulled up the financial documents David Kim had forwarded to me, the real books for Henderson and Associates, not the sanitized reports the junior partners received. Your firm has been hemorrhaging money for 2 years, I said. The only reason it's still afloat is because of several large, mysterious clients that appeared just when the firm needed them most. Ryan stared at the numbers, his face growing paler with each line item. Meridian Industries, Pinnacle Corporation, Global Dynamics Summit Technologies. I continued. Do you recognize those names? Those are some of our biggest clients. He whispered. They're also all my clients, Ryan. Every single one of them. I referred them to Henderson and Associates because I wanted to help your career without you knowing it. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. You've been keeping my law firm afloat. For 2 years, your mysterious year-end bonuses, your unexpectedly generous profit sharing, that big settlement that came out of nowhere last spring, that was all me, Ryan. I've been funneling money into your accounts and your firm's accounts to make sure you felt successful and confident. Ryan stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. This is insane. You're telling me that my entire career is built on a lie. I'm telling you that your entire career has been supported by someone who loved you enough to make your success possible while asking for nothing in return. But why, though? He demanded. Why would you do this without telling me? Because every time I tried to share my achievements with you, you made it clear that my success threatened you. So I made it invisible. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I'd been unconsciously documenting our conversations for months. March 3rd, I read aloud. When I mentioned that Pinnacle Industries had offered me a speaking engagement, you said, "Do you really think anyone wants to hear from someone who works alone from home?" Ryan winced. April 15th. When I got excited about a new client signing a long-term contract, you said, "Can we not talk about work during dinner? It's supposed to be our time together." I don't remember. May 22nd. When I tried to explain the complexity of a system integration project, you literally fell asleep while I was talking. Each example was a small paper cut that had accumulated into something much deeper. And now, seeing the pain in my own voice as I recounted them, I realized how much damage had been done to both of us by my decision to hide who I really was. "So you decided to lie to me instead of working through the problem together," Ryan said. "I decided to preserve our marriage by making my success invisible rather than forcing you to confront your insecurities about it. And in the process, you made me completely dependent on you without my knowledge." The accusation stung because there was truth in it. I had created a situation where Ryan's professional success was built on my foundation, even if that hadn't been my intention. "Ryan," I said quietly, "what would you have done if I'd told you the truth 4 years ago? If I'd said that I was building a multi-million-dollar company and wanted to support your career while I did it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "You would have felt emasculated and resentful, and our marriage would have ended then instead of now." "Maybe," he said, "but at least it would have been honest. And maybe we could have built something real together instead of this elaborate fiction." We stared at each other across our kitchen, both of us recognizing that we'd reached a point of no return. The truth was finally out, but the damage from years of deception and manipulation might be too extensive to repair. "So where does this leave us?" Ryan asked. Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Daniel Henderson, the senior partner at Ryan's firm. "I need to take this," I said, answering the call. "Ms. Martinez." Daniel's voice was tense. "I need to speak with you urgently about some very disturbing information I've received about one of my employees." I looked at Ryan, whose face had gone white. "What kind of information, Mr. Henderson?" "Information suggesting that Victoria Sterling has been conducting unauthorized investigations into the personal lives of her colleagues, potentially violating attorney-client privilege and certainly violating firm policy." The final piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Victoria hadn't just been manipulating Ryan. She'd been using firm resources and potentially compromising client confidentiality in her campaign to destroy our marriage. "Mr. Henderson," I said, "I think you and I need to have a very detailed conversation. And I think Ryan needs to hear it too." As I hung up the phone, I realized that Victoria Sterling had made a fatal mistake. In her eagerness to eliminate me as competition for Ryan's affections, she'd crossed legal and ethical lines that would destroy her own career. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. But first, I needed to make a decision that would change everything. Was I going to continue protecting Ryan from the truth, or was it time for him to face the full consequences of the choices he'd made? Looking at my husband, this man I'd loved enough to sacrifice my own recognition for, I realized that the answer would determine not just the fate of our marriage, but the kind of person I was going to be going forward. The quiet, self-sacrificing Elena who hid her light under a bushel was gone forever. The question now was, who would take her place? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The meeting with Daniel Henderson was scheduled for the following morning, but I couldn't sleep. Instead, I found myself in my home office, a space Ryan had never seen, because it was hidden behind what appeared to be a storage closet door. This was where I conducted my real business, surrounded by multiple monitors, secure servers, and the kind of technology infrastructure that most small countries would envy. As I sat in my ergonomic chair, staring at screens filled with financial data and communication logs, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable 24 hours earlier. I was going to investigate my own husband. Not because I didn't trust him anymore, though that ship had certainly sailed, but because I needed to understand the full scope of what Victoria Sterling had orchestrated. If she'd convinced Ryan to hire a private investigator to look into my activities, what else had she manipulated him into doing? I started with Ryan's email account. 4 years of marriage had given me access to most of his passwords, though I'd never used them. He wasn't particularly security conscious, and his tendency to use variations of the same password across multiple platforms made my job embarrassingly easy. What I found in his inbox made my blood run cold. The email trail with Victoria went back 8 months, far longer than Ryan had admitted. But these weren't casual conversations about career development. They were systematic, calculated exchanges that revealed a level of manipulation I hadn't fully grasped. The first email, dated 8 months ago, was innocuous enough. "Ryan, great working with you on the Morrison account. I've been thinking about your situation at home. You mentioned your wife works in tech. I have some insights about the industry that might be helpful." But as I scrolled through the months of correspondence, I watched Victoria's strategy unfold like a masterclass in psychological manipulation. First, she'd established herself as an expert in financial planning and relationship dynamics. I've seen so many marriages struggle when one partner doesn't understand the realities of building wealth. It's not about the amount of money, it's about the mindset, the drive, the commitment to excellence. Then she'd begun planting seeds of doubt about my work. Freelance tech work can be so unpredictable. Has Elena considered more stable employment? I know several firms that are always looking for administrative support with basic computer skills. Administrative support. Basic computer skills. The condescension was breathtaking. But it was the emails from the past month that truly revealed the depth of her campaign. Victoria hadn't just been undermining my reputation, she'd been systematically isolating Ryan from anyone who might offer a different perspective. "I noticed you haven't been coming to the usual Friday happy hours. It's important to maintain relationships with colleagues, especially now when you're making such important decisions about your future." She'd been controlling his social interactions, ensuring that she was his primary source of advice and support. Classic manipulation tactics that I recognized from corporate espionage cases I'd handled for clients. But the most disturbing discovery was buried in a folder marked "Personal Legal Matters." Ryan had been taking notes from his conversations with Victoria, treating her advice like professional counsel. And some of that advice was genuinely dangerous. According to Ryan's notes, Victoria had suggested that he, 1, document any suspicious financial activity in our household; 2, research Colorado's community property laws; 3, secure his own assets before initiating divorce proceedings; 4, consider whether my secretive behavior might indicate involvement in illegal activities. That last point made me pause. Victoria wasn't just trying to steal my husband, she was building a case to destroy my reputation and potentially my business. I opened a new document and began systematically cataloging everything I'd found. If Victoria wanted to play games with my marriage, I was going to show her what a real strategic campaign looked like. But first, I needed to understand her own vulnerabilities. I'd built my career on understanding systems, how they worked, where their weaknesses were, and how to exploit those weaknesses to create better outcomes. Victoria Sterling. For all her manipulation skills, was just another system, and every system had flaws. I started with her professional history. A few carefully placed calls to contacts in the legal community revealed some interesting information. Victoria had worked at 3 different firms in the past 5 years, an unusual pattern for someone supposedly building a stable career. At each firm, she'd left under circumstances that were described as personality conflicts or professional differences. Digging deeper through professional networks and court records, I found a pattern that was both disturbing and useful. Victoria had a history of targeting married male colleagues, particularly those in vulnerable positions within their firms. At her previous job, she'd been involved in a harassment complaint filed by the wife of a senior associate. The case had been settled quietly, but the details suggested a pattern of behavior remarkably similar to what she was doing with Ryan. I was building a comprehensive profile of Victoria's methods when my secure phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. "Elena Martinez speaking." "Ms. Martinez, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the Springdale Heights Police Department. I need to speak with you about a matter involving potential financial fraud." My heart stopped. "What kind of financial fraud?" "We received a report that you might be operating an unlicensed financial services business and potentially laundering money through various shell companies. The complainant provided detailed information about your activities." Victoria. She'd escalated from manipulation to actual legal accusations. Detective Chen, I can assure you that all my business activities are completely legitimate. Martinez Tech Consulting is a properly licensed corporation with full financial transparency. I'm sure that's the case, but we need to investigate any allegations of this nature. Would you be available to come in for questioning this afternoon? I glanced at my watch. It was 10 in the morning, which meant Victoria had filed this complaint early, probably right after learning that Ryan had discovered the truth about my business. Of course, I said, but I'd like to bring my attorney. That's your right. Can you be here by 2 o'clock? After hanging up, I immediately called Marcus Chen, CEO of Pinnacle Industries and one of my oldest clients. Marcus had started as a corporate lawyer before transitioning to business leadership, and he'd become both a professional ally and a personal friend over the years. Elena, Marcus answered on the first ring. Perfect timing. I was just reviewing the quarterly reports you sent. Exceptional work as always. Marcus, I need a favor. A big one. What's going on? I explained the situation, Ryan's betrayal, Victoria's manipulation, and now the police investigation. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. This woman sounds dangerous, he said when I finished. And clever. She's attacking you on multiple fronts simultaneously, personal, professional, and now legal. I need the best criminal defense attorney in Colorado. Someone who specializes in white-collar cases and understands complex financial structures. I know exactly who you need. Patricia Wells. She's a former federal prosecutor who now handles high-stakes corporate defense. She's expensive, but she's worth it. Money isn't an issue. I'll call her immediately. But Elena, you need to understand something. This isn't just about defending yourself anymore. Victoria Sterling has declared war on you. If you want to survive this, you need to start thinking like a general, not a victim. Marcus was right. I'd spent 4 years thinking like a wife trying to preserve her marriage. Now I needed to think like a CEO protecting her empire. Patricia Wells met me at the police station, and within 5 minutes of our conversation, I understood why Marcus had recommended her. She was sharp, thorough, and completely unintimidated by the allegations against me. The complaint is detailed, she said, reviewing the paperwork Detective Chen had provided. Too detailed for someone without inside knowledge of financial systems. This isn't just a jealous woman making accusations. Someone with serious financial expertise helped her construct this. As we sat in the police station conference room, Detective Chen spread out documents that made my stomach sink. Bank records, corporate filings, and financial transactions, all perfectly legal, but presented in a way that suggested potential money laundering. Ms. Martinez, Detective Chen began, can you explain why your company has received payments from 17 different corporations over the past 2 years, with funds subsequently transferred to accounts associated with Henderson and Associates? I looked at Patricia, who nodded slightly. Those were legitimate business referrals, I explained. I recommended Henderson and Associates to my clients for legal services, and the firm received payment for those services. But according to the complainant, these transactions were structured to avoid financial reporting requirements and may have been designed to funnel illegal funds through your husband's law firm. Victoria had done her homework. The complaint wasn't just about my business. It was designed to implicate Ryan and his entire firm in potential money laundering activities. Detective Say, Patricia interjected, my client is prepared to provide complete financial records for all her business activities. You'll find that every transaction has been properly reported to the IRS and all relevant regulatory bodies. That may be, Detective Chen replied, but we still need to investigate the allegations. Ms. Martinez, are you aware that your husband recently consulted with a private investigator about your financial activities? This was news to me. What kind of consultation? Detective Chen consulted her notes. According to our records, your husband met with Marcus Webb, a licensed private investigator, 3 days ago. Mr. Webb subsequently filed a suspicious activity report with the State Financial Crimes Unit. The room seemed to spin around me. Ryan hadn't just been planning to investigate me, he'd actually done it. And that investigation had provided Victoria with the ammunition she needed to file criminal complaints. Detective, I said carefully, I think you need to understand that this complaint is part of a deliberate campaign to destroy my business and my marriage. The person who filed it has been manipulating my husband for months. That's a serious accusation, Ms. Martinez. It's a serious situation, and I can prove it. Over the next 2 hours, I walked Detective Chen and Patricia through everything I'd discovered about Victoria's manipulation campaign: the email trail, the pattern of behavior at previous firms, the systematic isolation of Ryan from other perspectives, everything. Detective Chen took careful notes, but I could see skepticism in her expression. Ms. Martinez, even if everything you're saying about Ms. Sterling is true, it doesn't change the fact that your financial activities need to be investigated. I understand that, I replied. But I want you to investigate Victoria Sterling's activities as well. I believe she's engaged in harassment, professional misconduct, and potentially criminal interference with my business relationships. As we left the police station, Patricia pulled me aside. Elena, you handled that well, but we need to prepare for the possibility that this investigation could take months. In the meantime, Victoria Sterling is going to continue her campaign against you. What do you recommend? We go on offense. We stop reacting to her moves and start making our own. That evening, I sat in my hidden office, surrounded by monitors displaying financial records, email trails, and corporate documents. For 4 years, I'd used these skills to build businesses and solve problems for my clients. Now I was going to use them to save my own life. I started with a comprehensive audit of Victoria Sterling's professional activities. Using my access to legal databases and corporate records, I began mapping her financial relationships, client connections, and business dealings. What I found was fascinating and disturbing. Victoria's client list was impressive, high-net-worth individuals, successful business owners, and wealthy investors. But there was a pattern in her cases that suggested something more troubling than simple legal representation. 3 of her clients had gone through messy divorces in the past 2 years. In each case, Victoria had represented the male spouse, and in each case, the wife had been accused of financial impropriety or business misconduct. The accusations had never resulted in criminal charges, but they'd been devastating to the women's reputations and financial settlements. I pulled up the court records for these cases and found something that made my blood run cold. In each divorce, the wife's assets had been significantly undervalued, resulting in settlements that heavily favored Victoria's clients. And in each case, the wives had been accused of hiding assets or engaging in questionable business practices. The first case involved Jennifer Walsh, a successful interior designer whose husband claimed she was operating an illegal cash business. The second was Dr. Sarah Kim, a physician whose husband alleged she was hiding income through fraudulent medical billing. The third was Rebecca Torres, a restaurant owner whose husband accused her of tax evasion and money laundering. In each case, the allegations had been disproven after the divorce was finalized, but by then the damage was done. The women had received minimal settlements and their professional reputations were destroyed. Victoria Sterling wasn't just a marriage wrecker. She was running a sophisticated operation to financially destroy women and transfer their wealth to her male clients. But as I dug deeper, I discovered something even more disturbing. As I traced the financial flows from these divorces, I found connections that changed everything I thought I knew about Victoria's motivations. The private investigator Ryan had consulted Marcus Webb was a regular contractor for Victoria's clients. In fact, Webb had been involved in all 3 of the divorce cases I'd identified, always working to build cases against the wives while protecting the husband's assets. But more disturbing was what I found when I followed the money after these divorces. In each case, Victoria's client had invested heavily in real estate immediately after their divorce settlements. And in each case, those real estate investments had been managed by the same property development company, Sterling Holdings, LLC. I ran a corporate search on Sterling Holdings and felt my stomach drop. Victoria Sterling was listed as the managing partner of a property development company that had acquired over $20 million in real estate over the past 3 years. She was systematically destroying marriages financially, ruining women, and using the proceeds to build her own real estate empire. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the network diagram I'd created on my wall. Lines connected Victoria to Marcus Webb, to Sterling Holdings, to at least 6 high-net-worth divorces over the past 3 years. The pattern was undeniable. Ryan wasn't just a target for Victoria's romantic interests, he was a mark in a financial crime operation. I was documenting this discovery when my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." I stared at the message, feeling a mix of fear and anger. Victoria knew I was investigating her, which meant she was monitoring my activities somehow. I quickly ran a security scan on my computer systems and found what I was looking for: a small piece of spyware that had been installed on my laptop 3 days ago. The same day Ryan had met with Marcus Webb. Victoria hadn't just been manipulating my husband, she'd been spying on me. I isolated the spyware and began tracing its origins. Within an hour, I had my answer. The software had been installed remotely using credentials that could only have come from someone with physical access to my laptop. Ryan. Victoria had convinced my own husband to install spyware on my computer. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating that I had to step away from my desk and take several deep breaths. 4 years of marriage, and Ryan had literally betrayed me to help another woman destroy my business. But as the initial shock wore off, it was replaced by something else: cold, calculating fury. Victoria Sterling had made the mistake of underestimating me. She'd assumed that because I'd spent 4 years hiding my capabilities, I was actually weak. She'd confused my choice to be supportive with an inability to be ruthless. She was about to learn the difference. I spent the next 3 hours documenting everything I'd discovered and preparing what I privately called Operation Phoenix. Victoria had tried to destroy my marriage, my business, and my reputation. Now I was going to show her what total destruction actually looked like. But first, I needed allies. I started with Marcus Chen at Pinnacle Industries. When I called him at 11 p.m., he answered immediately. "Elena, how did things go with the police?" "It's worse than we thought, Marcus, much worse." I walked him through my discoveries about Victoria's operation, the pattern of destroyed marriages, and the financial crimes. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Elena, you're describing a criminal enterprise. This isn't just about your marriage anymore. This woman is a predator." "I know, and I need your help to stop her." "What do you need?" "I need to document everything without alerting her to what we're doing. That means I need resources she can't monitor or interfere with." "Consider it done. What else?" "I need to get ahead of this investigation before she can do any more damage to my business relationships." "I'll make some calls. Several of your other clients are personal friends of mine. We'll make sure they understand what's really happening." After hanging up with Marcus, I called David Kim at Henderson & Associates. As the firm's IT specialist, he'd been the one warning me about Victoria's activities. "David, I need to know everything Victoria Sterling has accessed on the firm's computer systems." "That's going to be a problem," he said. "She has administrative access to most of our databases, but I've been keeping logs of her activities because some of them seemed unusual." "What kind of unusual?" "She's been accessing client files for cases she's not assigned to, running searches on financial databases, and she's been copying files to external drives." "Can you prove it?" "I have screenshots and access logs going back 6 months. I was planning to report it to Mr. Henderson, but I wanted to wait until I had enough evidence." "David, I think it's time to report it. Tonight." "Are you sure this could destroy her career?" "David, she's trying to destroy mine, and she's committed multiple crimes in the process." There was a long pause. "Okay, I'll call Mr. Henderson and set up an emergency meeting." My next call was to Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the victims I'd identified in Victoria's divorce scheme. It took some searching to find her current contact information, but I eventually reached her at a medical practice in Denver. "Dr. Kim, my name is Elena Martinez. I'm calling because I believe you were victimized by the same criminal organization that's currently targeting me." There was a long pause. "What kind of criminal organization?" I explained what I'd discovered about Victoria Sterling's operation, the pattern of destroyed marriages, and the financial conspiracy behind it all. "My God," Dr. Kim whispered. "Victoria Sterling was my ex-husband's attorney. She destroyed me in that divorce. Everything you're describing, the accusations, the financial investigation, the systematic character assassination, it's exactly what happened to me." "Dr. Kim, I'm working with the FBI to expose this operation. Would you be willing to speak with them about your experience?" "Absolutely. Elena, I've been trying to rebuild my life for 2 years since that divorce. If there's a chance to get justice and prevent this from happening to other women, I'm in. I'll have Agent Thompson contact you directly." My final call was to Detective Chen. "Detective, this is Elena Martinez. I have significant new information about the complaint filed against me." "What kind of information?" "Information that suggests the complainant is part of a criminal enterprise targeting high-net-worth individuals through fraudulent divorce proceedings." That's a serious allegation, Ms. Martinez. It's a serious crime detective, and I have documentation to prove it. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I'll be there at 8 a.m. And detective, you might want to contact the FBI's white-collar crime division. This case is bigger than local jurisdiction. And as I hung up the phone, I realized there was one more avenue I needed to explore. Victoria's operation was too sophisticated, too well-funded, and too politically protected to be a simple criminal conspiracy. There had to be larger forces at work. I spent the next 2 hours conducting what I called deep background research, the kind of investigation that required access to databases most people didn't know existed. My years of working with Fortune 500 companies had given me contacts in financial intelligence, corporate security, and even some government agencies. What I found changed everything I thought I knew about the scope of the conspiracy. Victoria Sterling wasn't just running a divorce fraud scheme, she was part of a much larger operation that targeted successful women across multiple industries. Through a network of shell companies, political action committees, and offshore accounts, this organization had systematically destroyed dozens of female entrepreneurs, executives, and professionals over the past 5 years. The pattern was always the same. Identify a successful woman with significant assets, infiltrate her personal relationships, create grounds for divorce or business dissolution, and transfer her wealth to male associates who then invested it in properties and businesses controlled by the organization. But the most shocking discovery was the identity of the organization's leadership. Through a complex web of financial connections, I traced the funding for this operation back to a political action committee called Economic Development Initiative. EDI was chaired by Senator Robert Chen, one of the most powerful politicians in Colorado, and a leading candidate for governor. Senator Chen wasn't just connected to Victoria Sterling's operation, he was funding it through campaign contributions and federal grants. The organization was using political resources to commit crimes against successful women, then using the proceeds to fund political campaigns. I stared at my computer screen, understanding for the first time why Victoria had been so confident, so bold in her attacks. She wasn't just protected by legal expertise, she was protected by political power at the highest levels. At 3 in the morning, I finally stepped away from my computer and allowed myself to really process what I'd discovered. Not just Victoria's attacks on my marriage and business, but the broader implications of what I'd uncovered. This wasn't just about one woman's jealousy or even one criminal's greed. This was about a systematic campaign to eliminate successful women from positions of economic power. Victoria Sterling and her associates weren't just stealing money, they were enforcing a particular vision of society where women's success was seen as a threat to be eliminated. I thought about my grandmother, who had fled poverty in Mexico to build a small business in Colorado. She'd worked 18-hour days in a restaurant she owned, saved every penny, and eventually put 3 children through college. When she died, she left behind a modest fortune that had funded my own education and early business ventures. Mija, she used to tell me, success is not about hiding your light. It's about shining so brightly that you illuminate the path for others. For 4 years, I'd hidden my light to protect my husband's ego. But in doing so, I'd also hidden my ability to help other women to serve as an example of what was possible, to use my success to create opportunities for others. Victoria Sterling had tried to destroy me because she saw successful women as threats to be eliminated rather than allies to be celebrated. But her attack had forced me to remember who I really was. I wasn't just Elena Martinez, the supportive wife who worked from her kitchen table. I was Elena Martinez, the CEO, who had built an 8-figure business from nothing. I was Elena Martinez, the strategist who could dismantle complex systems and rebuild them better. I was Elena Martinez, the granddaughter of an immigrant who had refused to be invisible. And Victoria Sterling was about to learn what happened when you tried to destroy someone who had finally remembered her own power. At 5 a.m., I was back in my office putting the finishing touches on a presentation that would change everything. The documentation I'd compiled over the past 2 days painted a devastating picture of Victoria Sterling's operation, but I needed to ensure that when I revealed it, the impact would be maximum and the evidence would be ironclad. My first meeting was with Patricia Wells at 7 a.m. We met at her downtown office where I spread out printed copies of everything I'd discovered. "This is remarkable work," Patricia said, studying the network diagrams and financial flows I'd mapped. "You've basically built a RICO case in 48 hours. Is it enough?" "It's more than enough. Elena, you've uncovered a criminal enterprise that's been operating for years. The FBI is going to be very interested in this. What about the charges against me? Patricia smiled grimly. Once Detective Chen sees this evidence, I suspect those charges will disappear very quickly. Victoria Sterling made a critical error when she filed that complaint. She exposed herself to investigation. At 8 a.m., we walked into the police station. Detective Chen was waiting for us, along with two men I didn't recognize. Ms. Martinez, these are Agents Thompson and Rodriguez from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Agent Thompson has been tracking similar cases across multiple states. Agent Thompson, a tall man with graying hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward as I began presenting my findings. Ms. Martinez, what you've uncovered appears to confirm patterns we've been investigating in 3 other states. Victoria Sterling isn't just operating locally. This is a multi-state criminal enterprise. How many victims? I asked. We've identified 12 so far, but we believe there may be many more. As I walked them through my documentation, I watched Agent Rodriguez taking detailed notes, while Agent Thompson asked increasingly technical questions about the financial structures and data flows. The sophistication of this operation is remarkable, Agent Thompson said. Sterling has been using legitimate legal processes to commit systematic fraud, and she's been very careful to operate below the radar of most detection systems. What happens now? Patricia asked. Now we open a formal investigation, and Ms. Martinez, we're going to need your cooperation as a witness. Of course. Detective Chen cleared her throat. Ms. Martinez, in light of this new information, I'm recommending that all charges against you be dropped immediately. It's clear that the complaint was filed as part of a harassment campaign. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but I knew the real confrontation was still ahead. Agents, there's something else you need to know. Victoria Sterling is planning to escalate her campaign against me. I have reason to believe she's going to try to destroy my business relationships and potentially my marriage before your investigation can stop her. What kind of escalation? I pulled out my phone and showed them the threatening text message I'd received. She knows I'm investigating her, and she's getting desperate. Agent Thompson studied the message. We need to move quickly. How much time do you need to secure your business and personal relationships? Give me 48 hours. You've got it. But Ms. Martinez, you need to understand, once we move against Sterling, she's going to know that you were the source of the information. She may try to retaliate. Let her try, I said, feeling a cold certainty settle over me. I'm not hiding anymore. My next stop was Henderson and Associates. Daniel Henderson had called an emergency meeting after David Kim's report about Victoria's unauthorized access to firm systems. I arrived at the law firm's conference room to find Daniel Henderson, Connor McCullen, the senior partner David Kim, and surprisingly Ryan. Ryan looked haggard, as if he hadn't slept in days. When our eyes met across the conference table, I saw guilt, confusion, and something that might have been hope. Martinez, Daniel Henderson began. David has briefed us on some very disturbing information about Victoria Sterling's activities, but we need to understand the full scope of what's been happening. I looked directly at Ryan. How much have you told them? Everything, Ryan said quietly. About Victoria's manipulation, about my investigation of you, about the private investigator? Everything. I nodded and opened my laptop. Then you're going to want to see this. Over the next hour, I walked the senior partners through Victoria's criminal enterprise, her systematic targeting of wealthy divorces, and her infiltration of their firm's systems. Connor McCullen's face grew increasingly grim as I presented the evidence. Ms. Martinez, you're saying that Victoria Sterling used our firm's resources to commit crimes against our clients. I'm saying she used your firm as a cover for a multi-million-dollar fraud operation, and she compromised client confidentiality, violated attorney-client privilege, and potentially exposed the firm to criminal liability. Daniel Henderson turned to David Kim. David, how extensive was her access? She had administrative privileges to our case management system, client financial databases, and external research tools. Based on the logs, she accessed files for every major divorce case in the past 2 years, even cases she wasn't assigned to. Jesus Christ, Connor muttered. We could lose our licenses over this. Not if you cooperate with the FBI investigation, I said. Agent Thompson told me this morning that firms who've cooperated in similar cases have been treated as victims rather than co-conspirators. Ryan spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Elena, I need you to know that I had no idea about any of this. When Victoria suggested I investigate your finances, I thought she was trying to help our marriage. I looked at my husband, this man who'd betrayed me while believing he was being helped, and felt a mixture of anger and pity. Ryan, you installed spyware on my computer. You hired a private investigator to build a case against your own wife. You shared intimate details about our marriage with a woman who was systematically manipulating you. I know, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I know I fucked up. I know I betrayed you. But Elena, I swear I didn't know she was a criminal. Ignorance isn't an excuse for betrayal, I replied, but it might be a starting point for redemption. The room was quiet for a moment before Daniel Henderson spoke again. Ms. Martinez, what do you need from us? I need Victoria Sterling fired immediately. I need all her access revoked. And I need a public statement from the firm clarifying that any information she provided about me or my business was unauthorized and potentially fraudulent. Done, Connor said immediately. What else? I need protection for David Kim. When Victoria realizes she's been exposed, she's going to look for someone to blame. We'll handle that, Daniel assured me. I turned to Ryan. And I need you to decide who you're going to be going forward. Because the man who spent 8 months taking advice from Victoria Sterling isn't someone I can be married to. Ryan nodded slowly. What can I do to start earning back your trust? You can help me destroy her. That afternoon, I met with Marcus Chen and 5 other CEOs whose companies had received services from Henderson and Associates based on my recommendations. I'd called an emergency meeting to brief them on the situation before Victoria could try to damage my business relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. I need to inform you about a situation that could affect your legal representation and your business relationships with my firm. As I explained Victoria's criminal enterprise and her infiltration of Henderson and Associates, I watched the expressions around the conference table shift from concern to anger to determination. Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Summit Technologies, spoke first. Elena, you're saying this woman tried to destroy your business as part of a criminal fraud scheme. I'm saying she's part of an organization that systematically targets successful women for financial destruction. I was her latest target, but I won't be her last victim unless we stop her. What do you need from us? Asked Tom Rodriguez from Global Dynamics. I need you to be prepared for contact from the FBI as witnesses in their investigation. And I need you to understand that any negative information you might receive about me or my business in the coming days is likely part of Victoria's retaliation campaign. Marcus Chen leaned forward. Elena, you've been our technology partner for 6 years. Your work has saved our companies millions of dollars and helped us grow exponentially. If anyone tries to question your integrity or competence, they'll have to go through all of us. The others nodded in agreement, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the security of being truly seen and valued for who I was. There's one more thing, I said. Victoria Sterling is going to try to discredit me publicly when she realizes she's been exposed. I need you to be ready to counter that narrative. Consider it done, Sarah said. We'll make sure the business community knows exactly who Elena Martinez is and what she's accomplished. As the meeting ended, Marcus pulled me aside. Elena, I've been thinking about what happens after this is over. You've been operating as a solo consultant, but what you've built is really an enterprise. Have you ever considered going public? Going public, an IPO? Martinez Tech Consulting could be a publicly traded company. Your revenue, your client base, your technology solutions, it's all there. And going public would make it much harder for anyone to attack your business in the future. The idea was intriguing, but first I had to survive Victoria Sterling's final assault. That evening, I returned home to find Ryan sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by legal documents and financial records. What's all this? I asked. I'm documenting everything Victoria had me do, he said. Every meeting with the private investigator, every piece of information I gave her, every action I took based on her advice. I want to make sure the FBI has a complete record. I sat down across from him, studying his face. The arrogance and condescension that had characterized our morning confrontation 2 days ago were gone. replaced by something that looked like genuine remorse. Ryan, why did you trust her over me? He was quiet for a long moment. Because she made me feel important. She treated me like I was this successful attorney whose opinions mattered. And she made it seem like caring about our financial future was noble, rather than shallow. And I made you feel unimportant. You made me feel invisible. Every time I tried to discuss money or career goals, you either changed the subject or gave vague answers that made it clear you weren't really engaged with my concerns. I absorbed this, recognizing the truth in it. In my effort to hide my success, I'd also hidden my interest in his. I wasn't trying to make you feel invisible, I said. I was trying to protect you from feeling inadequate. I know that now, but at the time it felt like you didn't care about the things that mattered to me. And Victoria made you feel like she cared. Ryan nodded. She asked detailed questions about my cases, celebrated my successes, and seemed genuinely interested in my professional development. It felt like having a partner who actually understood ambition. Even though she was manipulating you. Even though she was manipulating me. Elena, I know how fucked up this sounds, but part of me is almost grateful that she turned out to be a criminal. Why? Because it means my judgment wasn't completely broken. The woman I thought I was connecting with was a fiction designed to exploit me. The real Victoria Sterling is a predator. I studied my husband's face, looking for signs of deception or self-justification. What I saw instead was genuine shame and a kind of devastated clarity. Ryan, if we're going to rebuild this marriage, it has to be on completely different terms. I know. No more secrets. No more hiding who we are to protect each other's feelings. No more making major decisions without full disclosure. I agree. And no more taking advice about our relationship from outside parties, especially attractive female colleagues. Ryan actually smiled at that. Definitely no more attractive female colleagues offering relationship advice. I looked around our kitchen, this space where I'd hidden my success for 4 years, where Ryan had delivered his ultimatum, where we'd finally told each other the truth. There's something else, I said. I've been offered the opportunity to take my company public. It would mean going from hiding my success to having it be a matter of public record. Ryan's expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. How do you feel about that? Terrified and excited. It would mean the end of being able to fly under the radar. Elena, after everything that's happened, I think flying under the radar is overrated. Even if it means being married to a woman whose net worth will be published in financial magazines. Ryan was quiet for a moment. A week ago, that would have terrified me. Today, it sounds like being married to someone remarkable who's finally going to get the recognition she deserves. I felt something shift between us. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of forgiveness. We have a lot of work to do, I said. I know. But Elena, for the first time in months, I feel like we're on the same side. My phone buzzed with a text message. The number was Victoria Sterling's. Tomorrow, you're going to regret everything you've done. Some battles shouldn't be started. I showed the message to Ryan, who went pale. She's threatening you. She's threatening us, I corrected. But Victoria Sterling is about to learn that some battles shouldn't be started, but once they are, they should be finished. I forwarded the message to Agent Thompson and Patricia Wells, then looked around my hidden office one last time. Tomorrow, this space would no longer be a secret. Tomorrow, Elena Martinez would step into the light. Tomorrow, Victoria Sterling would learn what happened when she underestimated someone who had finally remembered her own power. The game was almost over, and I was holding all the winning cards. It was time to play them. The morning of Victoria Sterling's destruction began before dawn. I stood in my home office, no longer hidden, as Ryan now knew every detail of my real business, watching the sunrise through the window while reviewing my final preparations. Today would either mark the complete vindication of everything I'd built, or it would see Victoria's political connections destroy me before justice could be served. At 6 a.m., my secure phone rang. Agent Thompson's voice was tense. Elena, we have a problem. Victoria Sterling didn't go home last night. Her car was found abandoned at Denver International Airport, and we believe she may have fled the jurisdiction. My blood ran cold. What does that mean for the case? It means we need to move faster than planned. If she's contacted her political connections, they might try to shut down our investigation before we can make arrests. How much time do we have? Hours, maybe less. Elena, I need you to understand if Victoria Sterling has fled, it means she knows we're coming for her. That makes you a target for retaliation from her associates. I looked around my office at the wall of evidence I'd compiled at the network diagrams showing the full scope of Victoria's criminal enterprise. Agent Thompson, I'm not hiding anymore. If her associates want to come for me, they're welcome to try. That's what I was afraid you'd say. Elena, we're going to need you to testify before a federal grand jury this afternoon. Can you be ready? I've been ready for days. And after hanging up, I called Ryan. Victoria's run. The FBI needs me to testify today. Elena, if she's fled, doesn't that mean you've won? It means the real fight is just beginning. By 8 a.m., I was in the offices of Henderson and Associates, where Daniel Henderson had called an emergency partnership meeting. The conference room was packed not just with the firm's partners, but with FBI agents, Detective Chen, and several people I didn't recognize. Ladies and gentlemen, Agent Thompson began, we have credible intelligence that Victoria Sterling's criminal organization is planning to destroy evidence and intimidate witnesses before we can complete our investigation. We need your full cooperation to prevent that from happening. Connor McCullen looked grim. Agent Thompson, what exactly are you asking us to do? We're asking you to allow us to place the entire firm under federal protection while we execute search warrants and make arrests. That means no one leaves the building until we've secured all evidence and neutralized any threats. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. David Kim raised his hand. Agent Thompson, I've been monitoring Victoria's computer access remotely. She logged into our systems at 3 a.m. this morning and attempted to delete several files. I was able to preserve them, but she knows we're on to her. What kind of files? Agent Rodriguez asked. Client communications, financial records, and something called Phoenix Files documents I've never seen before that were encrypted and hidden in a secure partition. I felt my stomach clench. Phoenix Files, the same name I'd given to my own investigation. Victoria had been monitoring my work more closely than I'd realized. David, can you access those files? I can try, but the encryption is sophisticated. It might take hours to break. Agent Thompson turned to me. Elena, your investigation identified the key financial connections in this conspiracy. We need you to walk our forensic team through everything you discovered while David works on those encrypted files. For the next 3 hours, I guided FBI forensic accountants through the complex web of shell companies, political action committees, and offshore accounts that funded Victoria's operation. What we found was even worse than I'd initially discovered. Twist number 4. The scope of the conspiracy. As we dug deeper into the financial records, a pattern emerged that was both shocking and terrifying. Victoria Sterling's divorce fraud operation was just one component of a much larger criminal enterprise. The organization had been systematically targeting successful women across multiple industries: technology, medicine, law, finance, and real estate. But the goal wasn't just financial. They were specifically targeting women who held positions of influence, who served on corporate boards, who had political connections, or who might challenge traditional power structures. Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the victims I'd contacted, wasn't just a successful physician. She was also a board member of the Colorado Medical Association and a vocal advocate for healthcare reform. Jennifer Walsh wasn't just an interior designer. She was married to a state legislator and had been considering a run for city council. Rebecca Torres wasn't just a restaurant owner. She controlled a significant portion of Denver's Hispanic business community. My God, Agent Rodriguez whispered as we mapped out the connections. This isn't just about money. This is about eliminating women from positions of power. The financial flows told an even more disturbing story. The proceeds from the destroyed women weren't just funding real estate investments. They were funding political campaigns, lobbying efforts, and what appeared to be a network of male candidates for local and state offices. Agent Thompson, I said, studying the data. I think we're looking at a systematic campaign to eliminate women from Colorado's economic and political leadership. That's a strong accusation, Elena. Look at the numbers. Over the past 5 years, this organization has targeted 43 successful women. After their divorces and business destructions, 27 of them left Colorado entirely. Of the 16 who stayed, only 3 still hold significant business or community positions. The implications were staggering. Victoria Sterling wasn't just a criminal, she was part of a political operation designed to ensure male dominance in Colorado's power structures. But the most shocking discovery came when David Kim finally cracked the encryption on the Phoenix files. Oh my God, he said, his face pale as he stared at his computer screen. Elena, you need to see this. The Phoenix files contain detailed dossiers on over 100 successful women across the western United States. Each file included financial information, personal relationships, political affiliations, and what appeared to be strategic plans for neutralization. My own file was there marked as priority target, high influence potential. The dossier included information about my business that even I had forgotten: early clients' investment strategies, even my grandmother's background, and the influence her story might have on my public narrative. But what made my blood run cold was the section marked contingency plans. And if the divorce strategy failed to destroy me, Victoria's organization had backup plans that included IRS audits triggered by false reports, immigration investigations targeting my employees, and even potential criminal charges related to terrorist financing based on my work with international clients. Elena, Agent Thompson said grimly, this organization wasn't just planning to destroy your marriage. They were planning to destroy your entire life. As we continued analyzing the Phoenix files, Agent Rodriguez made a discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about the scope of the conspiracy. Agent Thompson, I found the source of their political protection. He pulled up a document that made the room fall silent. It was a memo from Senator Robert Chen's office outlining a strategy to reduce female economic influence in key Western markets to ensure traditional family values and political stability. The memo explicitly referenced Victoria Sterling's operation as a successful pilot program that should be expanded to additional markets with appropriate federal support. Senator Chen wasn't just connected to Victoria's operation, he was directing it as part of a broader political strategy. Jesus Christ, Detective Chen whispered. We're talking about a sitting U.S. senator using federal resources to commit crimes against American citizens. Agent Thompson was already on his phone, presumably contacting FBI headquarters. When he hung up, his expression was grim. We're about to get very busy. The Attorney General's office is taking direct control of this investigation. Elena, your testimony isn't just going to a local grand jury, you're going to be testifying before Congress. Before I could respond, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer. Elena Martinez speaking. Ms. Martinez, this is Senator Robert Chen. I believe we need to have a conversation. The room went silent. Agent Thompson immediately signaled for me to put the call on speaker. Senator Chen, I'm surprised to hear from you. Ms. Martinez, I think there's been a significant misunderstanding about my niece Victoria's activities. Perhaps we could meet to discuss a resolution that would be beneficial for everyone involved. A resolution. He was trying to make a deal before the full scope of his involvement could be exposed. What kind of resolution, Senator? The kind that recognizes your impressive business accomplishments and offers you opportunities for growth that might be more attractive than pursuing allegations that could be difficult to prove. Agent Thompson was frantically taking notes and signaling for me to keep him talking. What kind of opportunities? Federal consulting contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, appointments to technology advisory boards, perhaps even consideration for a cabinet position in the next administration should circumstances align appropriately. He was offering me everything I'd ever dreamed of professionally in exchange for my silence about his criminal conspiracy. Senator, that's an incredibly generous offer. I'm glad you see it that way. Now I understand you've spoken with some federal agents about Victoria's activities. Perhaps those conversations could be clarified to reflect the true nature of what occurred. And what is the true nature of what occurred? A troubled young woman who became obsessed with your husband and made some poor decisions in pursuit of that obsession. Certainly nothing that rises to the level of organized criminal activity. I looked around the room at the FBI agents at the evidence we'd compiled at Ryan, who was watching me with an expression of complete trust. Senator Chen, I appreciate your offer, but I have a counter-proposal. I say, what kind of counter-proposal? The kind where you resign from office, surrender yourself to federal authorities, and help us identify every person involved in your conspiracy. In exchange, I won't recommend that you be charged with treason for using your position to wage war on American women. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Ms. Martinez, I think you're making a serious mistake. Senator, I think you made the mistake when you targeted the wrong woman. Senator Chen hung up, but within minutes my phone was ringing again. This time it was Victoria Sterling herself. Elena, you have no idea what you're dealing with. Victoria, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. The question is, do you think you've won, but this is bigger than you can imagine. There are people involved who will destroy you completely rather than let this conspiracy be exposed. Then they should have thought of that before they tried to destroy me. Elena, I'm going to give you one last chance. Walk away now, take whatever deal my uncle offered you, and pretend this never happened. Because if you don't, I promise you that everything you've built will be reduced to ashes. I looked around the room at the agents, at the evidence, at Ryan, who was listening to every word. Victoria, you've spent months trying to destroy my marriage, my business, and my reputation. You've stolen millions of dollars from innocent women and corrupted our legal system. You've tried to eliminate successful women from positions of power because you're threatened by what we represent. I was trying to restore natural order. You were trying to enforce your own pathetic insecurities on the rest of the world. But here's what you never understood, Victoria. I'm not some vulnerable target you can manipulate and destroy. I stood up, feeling every eye in the room on me. I'm Elena Martinez. I built an 8-figure business while you were playing games. I uncovered your entire criminal conspiracy while you thought you were controlling me. I turned your own methods against you and exposed the rot at the heart of your organization. Elena, I'm not finished. You want to know what happens next? What happens next is that you're going to prison. Your uncle is going to prison. Every man who participated in your conspiracy is going to prison. And every woman you destroyed is going to be compensated from the assets we seize from your criminal enterprise. You can't prove... Victoria, I have recordings of our conversations, financial records of your transactions, testimony from your victims, and cooperation from the FBI. I don't need to prove anything else. You've already proven it for me. There was a long pause before Victoria spoke again, and when she did, her voice was different, desperate, and vicious. If I go down, Elena, I'm taking everyone with me, including your precious husband who helped me spy on you. I looked at Ryan, who had gone pale. Victoria, Ryan was your victim, not your accomplice. But even if he weren't, even if our marriage ended today, I would still destroy you. Because this was never about saving my relationship. This was about stopping you from destroying other women. You self-righteous bitch. No, Victoria, I'm something much worse than that. I'm someone who's smarter than you, more successful than you, and completely immune to your manipulation. I'm your worst nightmare, a woman who refuses to be made smaller for anyone's comfort. I hung up the phone and turned to Agent Thompson. I assume you recorded that conversation. Every word. Elena, I have to ask, are you sure you want to see this through? Senator Chen has significant political power, and Victoria Sterling clearly has resources we haven't identified yet. This could get very ugly very quickly. I thought about my grandmother, about the restaurant she'd built from nothing, about the example she'd set for persistence in the face of overwhelming odds. Agent Thompson, ugly is what happens when good people stay quiet while evil people destroy lives. I'm done staying quiet. Over the next 6 hours, I watched Victoria Sterling's empire collapse in real time. Agent Thompson's team executed simultaneous search warrants on Sterling Holdings properties, Senator Chen's offices, and the homes of 17 men who had been identified as clients of the divorce fraud scheme. The evidence they found was even more damning than what I'd discovered. Financial records showed that over the past 5 years, the conspiracy had stolen more than $40 million from successful women. But the non-financial destruction was even more extensive. Political careers, destroyed businesses, bankrupted children, separated from their mothers through fraudulent custody proceedings. The human cost was staggering. By noon, Senator Chen had been arrested at his office in the state capitol. The images of him being led away in handcuffs were already trending on social media. By 2 p.m., warrants had been issued for Victoria Sterling and Marcus Webb, though both remained in the wind. But the most satisfying moment came at 3 p.m. when Agent Thompson called to tell me that Victoria Sterling had been apprehended trying to board a private jet to a non-extradition country. Elena, she had $2 million in cash, multiple fake passports, and a laptop containing financial information about offshore accounts. We also found something else, a detailed plan to have you killed if the legal intimidation didn't work. The words hit me like a physical blow. Victoria hadn't just been planning to destroy my business and marriage, she'd been planning to murder me. Agent Thompson, how detailed was this plan? Detailed enough that we're placing you in protective custody until we can arrest everyone involved. That won't be necessary. Elena, this is serious. They had your daily routines, your home security system, even information about your travel patterns. Agent Thompson, if Victoria Sterling wanted me dead, she should have killed me before I figured out who she really was. Now it's too late. I'm no longer a target, I'm a witness under federal protection. Killing me now would only make things worse for everyone involved. That evening, I stood in the conference room at Henderson & Associates, surrounded by FBI agents, federal prosecutors, and journalists from major news outlets. Agent Thompson had suggested holding a press conference to ensure that the full scope of the conspiracy became public knowledge before Victoria's political allies could try to control the narrative. As I looked out at the cameras and reporters, I realized this was the moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for my entire life. Not just to tell my story, but to speak for every woman who had been targeted by this organization. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. My name is Elena Martinez, and I'm the CEO of Martinez Tech Consulting. For the past 4 years, I hid my professional success to protect my husband's ego. That decision nearly cost me everything when I became the target of a criminal conspiracy designed to destroy successful women. I spent the next hour walking the journalists through everything I'd discovered. The financial fraud, the political connections, the systematic targeting of women in positions of influence. But I also talked about something deeper, the cultural forces that had made Victoria's conspiracy possible. This wasn't just about money, I said. This was about fear. Fear of women's economic independence, fear of women's political power, fear of a world where success isn't determined by gender, but by capability and effort. One reporter raised her hand. Ms. Martinez, what do you say to critics who might argue that you're exaggerating the scope of this conspiracy for personal gain? I smiled, thinking about everything I'd been through. I'd say that I built an 8-figure business while keeping it secret for 4 years. If I wanted personal gain, I would have gone public long ago. I'm speaking out now because staying quiet enables the kind of systematic oppression that almost destroyed me and has already destroyed dozens of other women. Another reporter spoke up. What happens to your marriage after everything that's occurred? I looked across the room at Ryan, who was watching me with an expression of complete admiration. My marriage will survive or fail based on whether we can build something real together. But either way, I'm done making myself smaller to accommodate other people's insecurities. As the press conference ended, Agent Rodriguez approached me with a grim expression. Elena, we've been analyzing the offshore accounts Victoria's organization used to hide their proceeds. We found something that might interest you. He handed me a financial document that made my blood run cold. What am I looking at? A wire transfer for $12 million sent to an account in the Cayman Islands 3 days ago. The transfer was authorized by Senator Chen's chief of staff. What's significant about that? The receiving account belongs to a shell company called Phoenix Recovery LLC. Elena, they weren't just planning to destroy you. They were planning to steal your entire business. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Victoria's organization hadn't just been targeting me for destruction, they'd been planning to acquire Martinez Tech Consulting after bankrupting me through legal fees and reputation destruction. Agent Rodriguez, do we know who owns Phoenix Recovery? That's the interesting part. The company was incorporated by Victoria Sterling 6 months ago, but the beneficial ownership was transferred to a trust controlled by Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb, the private investigator, who had been Ryan's unwitting tool in gathering intelligence about my business. They were going to steal my company and operate it as part of their criminal enterprise. That's exactly what they were planning. Elena, if you hadn't uncovered this conspiracy when you did, you would have lost everything: your marriage, your business, and potentially your life. I looked around the conference room at the evidence boards and financial charts that documented Victoria's conspiracy, at the journalists who were already filing stories that would expose this organization to the world. Agent Rodriguez, there's something poetic about the fact that they called it Phoenix Recovery, because that's exactly what this is, a phoenix rising from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. 6 months later, I stood in the boardroom of Martinez Tech Consulting, now a publicly traded company with offices in Denver, San Francisco, and Austin. The IPO had been the most successful technology offering of the year, and my company was now valued at over $200 million. But the financial success wasn't what mattered most to me. What mattered was the foundation I'd established using the funds recovered from Victoria's criminal enterprise, the Phoenix Foundation, dedicated to helping women rebuild their lives after economic abuse. Ryan walked into the boardroom carrying 2 cups of coffee and a folder marked Sterling Prosecution Update. "The sentencing hearing is next week," he said, handing me the folder. Victoria Sterling received 15 years in federal prison. Senator Chen got 20. Marcus Webb is cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. And the other victims? Dr. Sarah Kim is rebuilding her medical practice with funding from the Phoenix Foundation. Jennifer Walsh is running for city council in Denver. Rebecca Torres opened 3 new restaurants and is considering a run for the state legislature. I smiled, thinking about how different things might have been if I'd continued hiding my success. "Ryan, do you ever regret how everything played out?" He was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the Denver skyline. "I regret that it took a criminal conspiracy for me to see who my wife really was. I regret that my insecurities made me vulnerable to manipulation. But Elena, I don't regret that you finally stopped hiding your light, even though it means being married to someone more successful than you." Ryan laughed, a genuine sound that had taken months to return to our relationship. "Elena, I'm married to someone who built a business empire, exposed a criminal conspiracy, testified before Congress, and started a foundation that's helped dozens of women rebuild their lives. Being successful doesn't make you intimidating, it makes you incredible." I reached across the table and took his hand. "We have a board meeting in an hour to discuss the acquisition offer from Pinnacle Industries. Are you going to accept Marcus Chen's proposal?" "I'm going to consider it. But Ryan, whatever I decide, it's going to be based on what's best for the business and the foundation, not on what makes anyone else comfortable." That's exactly how it should be. Nirin, as we sat in comfortable silence, I thought about the woman I'd been just a year ago, hiding in her kitchen, making herself smaller, sacrificing her own recognition to preserve someone else's ego. That woman was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and completely unwilling to compromise her authentic self for anyone's comfort. Victoria Sterling had tried to destroy me, but instead she'd forced me to become the person I was always meant to be. The person my grandmother would have been proud of. The person who refused to hide her light no matter how bright it shone. 1 year after Victoria Sterling's arrest, I received an invitation that would have seemed impossible during my years of hiding. The White House was hosting a summit on women's economic empowerment, and I'd been asked to deliver the keynote address. As I stood at the podium in the East Room, looking out at an audience that included senators, CEOs, and advocates from across the country, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "my name is Elena Martinez, and I'm here to talk about the power of refusing to be made smaller." I told them about my grandmother's restaurant, about building a business in secret, about nearly losing everything to a criminal conspiracy designed to eliminate successful women from positions of power. But mostly I talked about the choice every woman faces, the choice between hiding our light to make others comfortable or shining so brightly that we illuminate the path for others to follow. The women who tried to destroy me believed that female success was a threat to the natural order, I said. They were right to be afraid. Because when women succeed, when we refuse to be made smaller, when we claim our power and use it to lift others up, we don't just change our own lives. We change the world. As I finished speaking, the audience rose in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. But what meant the most to me was seeing Ryan in the front row, his face full of pride and admiration. After the event, as we walked through the White House grounds, Ryan squeezed my hand. "Elena, your grandmother would have been so proud." I looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky, thinking about all the women who had hidden their talents, sacrificed their dreams, and made themselves smaller to accommodate a world that was threatened by their power. I hope so, I said. But more than that, I hope we've made it easier for the next generation of women to shine without fear. As we walked toward our car, I felt a deep sense of completion. Victoria Sterling's conspiracy had been exposed, her victims had been compensated, and the systems that enabled such abuse had been reformed. But the real victory wasn't in destroying those who had tried to destroy me. The real victory was in finally becoming the person I was always meant to be, someone who refused to hide her light no matter how brightly it shone. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, and she was never going back into hiding again. Elena Martinez went on to build one of the most successful technology consulting firms in the world. The Phoenix Foundation has helped over 500 women rebuild their lives after economic abuse. Victoria Sterling is serving her sentence at a federal prison in Colorado where she is required to attend weekly counseling sessions on the psychology of manipulation and abuse. Ryan Hayes became general counsel for Martinez Tech Consulting and is now a nationally recognized expert on legal ethics and professional responsibility. He frequently speaks about the dangers of allowing personal insecurities to compromise professional judgment. Senator Robert Chen was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison and died of a heart attack during his third year of incarceration. His political action committees were dissolved and their assets were transferred to organizations supporting women's economic empowerment. The criminal conspiracy that targeted successful women was found to have operated in 12 states and affected over 200 victims. Federal legislation inspired by Elena's case now provides enhanced protections for women facing economic abuse and establishes severe penalties for using legal processes to commit financial fraud. Elena and Ryan remained married and had 2 daughters, both of whom were taught from an early age never to make themselves smaller for anyone's comfort. Martinez Tech Consulting is now valued at over $1 billion. Elena Martinez's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest act of love isn't protecting someone else's feelings. It's having the courage to be authentically yourself. Her journey shows us that hiding our light to make others comfortable doesn't create genuine relationships. It creates opportunities for manipulation and betrayal. When we refuse to be made smaller, we don't just save ourselves, we illuminate the path for others who are struggling in the shadows. What started as a woman desperately trying to preserve her marriage by hiding her success became a powerful testament to the strength that emerges when we stop apologizing for who we are. Elena transformed from someone who sacrificed her own recognition to protect her husband's ego into a leader who used her voice to protect other women from the same systematic destruction she almost faced. The truth Elena discovered applies to all of us. Your success, your talents, and your achievements are not threats to be hidden. They are gifts to be shared. Whether it's in our relationships, our careers, or our communities, we all have a choice between making ourselves smaller to fit into other people's comfort zones or standing tall and inspiring others to do the same. Victoria Sterling's conspiracy was ultimately defeated not by hidden schemes or elaborate revenge, but by one woman's decision to stop hiding and start shining. That's a power every single one of us possesses, and it's a reminder that our authentic selves are always our greatest weapons against those who would try to diminish us. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Because every story we share is about real people finding the strength to overcome impossible odds, and sometimes that strength is exactly what you need to hear.